Hello everybody and welcome back to another Kawazi Magic the Gathering Arena deck. Today we are looking at Modify Then Destroy. Not the best name I've ever come up with for a deck, but I couldn't think of anything better for this one. So what this deck is a Gruul Modify deck based around the new Modify mechanic introduced in Kamigawa, which a good example of which is Kodama of the West Tree, which has modified creatures you control have trample. Whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So modified just means having any equipment or aura attached. We're not using that here, but also having a counter. Not just 1/1 counters, also other counters. We're primarily using 1/1 counters here, but this card is an absolute beast. Just playing this card and having a modified creature that can hit the opponent has caused concedes on the spot for me in many cases. So he is one of the powerhouses of this deck, almost considering running 4 just due to wild cards and it being legendary. I've only opted for 3 for now, but yeah, this is one of the cards the deck is built around. Also, modified creatures you control have trample is a brilliant addition. We're getting some very big creatures very quickly with this deck, and being able to trample over all the pesky Orzhov sacrifice decks is fantastic. Other cards that are from Kamigawa, Thundering Raiju. This is a 3/3 haste for 4. It has whenever Thundering Raiju attacks, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, i.e. it's basically a 4/4 haste for 4 if you want it to be. And then it deals X damage to each opponent where X is the number of X is the number of modified creatures you control other than Thundering Raiju. So if we have 2 other modified creatures, it deals 2 damage and then is just a 4/4. These obviously are pretty good as a set of 4 because they can modify each other and stack that sort of pre-combat shock damage up. It's proving to be quite a good sort of top-endy finishing card in the deck for me because it will modify an additional creature and provide it with trample with Kodama if you have that out, but also it's just a fast threat that is boosting up the size of other threats in the deck. And counters we do have other synergies with, as we'll see in a second. Other new cards from Kamigawa is Kami's Flare. Now I'm giving this one a go because it is a common. It's a common removal, so it's 2 mana and it deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So like a Dragon's Fire, but it also deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller if you control a modified creature. Every creature basically in this deck is modified. We have a certain number of creatures that on entering the battlefield enter modified or can, which is Kappa Tech Wrecker, which we'll come to in a second, Oran Rifruz, and the Raiju. So we've got at least 10 creatures that can modify themselves, as well as plenty other ways of modifying creatures. So we pretty much always hit that 2 extra damage to the face. So 3 damage to a creature plus a shock to the face for 2 at instant speed is actually pretty decent. We're also running Kumano faces Kakazan, which is a 1 mana saga. First level deals 1 damage to the opponent and each planeswalker they control. That it has come up for me a couple of times. Next turn it puts a 1/1 counter on a creature we cast, and then the third turn it turns into a 2/2 haste that exiles the opponent's creatures when they die. This is just so much value for 1 mana. The 1 damage is, here nor there, it all adds up. But then the next step, adding a 1/1 to basically a 2-drop, as this is be a turn 1 play, is why we're running 3 copies of Rahilda, because Rahilda is a brilliant value engine, can get really nasty if the opponent can't cast something on turn 2, as it gets double strike, and obviously it can farm us some of their cards to use against them. So this Kumano faces Kakazan combined with Rahilda sort of works like the Tenacious Pup Rahilda combination, which people know and love. So you end up with a 3/3 first strike on your second turn, which if it damages them is going to start farming their cards. So it's basically working on the same combination, but with this saga. Obviously the 1/1 counter is also a modification to Rahilda, and then we're getting a 2/2 at the end of it, which we're not making huge use of the enchantment creature, but it's a 2/2, so that's got to be dealt with at some point. The final new card, not the final new card, another new card we're using is Kappa Tech Wrecker. This thing has actually overperformed for me massively. Not only does it enter modified, because it enters with a Death Touch counter on it, but it's a way to, when he does combat damage to a player, you can remove the Death Touch counter and exile target artifact or enchantment that player controls. This Kamigawa meta at the moment is pretty much exclusively artifacts or enchantments of some variety for someone. So that clause is very, very applicable. And not only that, but you can ninjutsu this in for an unblocked Tenacious Pup or a Hilda or something if you have something you really need to get rid of. So this thing's been working out wonders for me. Not only is it difficult to block because it has a death touch counter on it, so they either have to sacrifice their favorite creature or a favorite enchantment, or you can ninjutsu it in. So it's actually a very, very flexible card, and obviously works well with the modified theme. We have Dugan Defends the Temple. So this is a 3 costing saga. First step creates a 1/1 mana dork. Step 2, put 2/1/1 counters on 2 target creatures. So basically we can add some more modifications to our creatures, grow them up. And the third step creates a Remnant of the Rising Star, which is a 2/2 flying enchantment dragon spirit, which has whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay X. When you do, put X/1/1 counters on that creature. As long as we control 5 or more modified creatures, Remnant of the Rising Star gets 5/5 and has trample. This is basically a great place to sink our mana in at late game. As the top end of this deck is basically 4-drop, we do have a 5-drop, which I'll come to in a second, but it's just a great place to sink all the excess mana that we have. It modifies our creatures on the way and ramps us up to be able to cast extra spells. Seems to be performing very well in the deck. A final new card from Kamigawa, which I'm just trialing out on here really, is Invoke the Ancients. So Invoke is a cycle of cards. There's one for each color, which is this one's 4 green and 1 mana, so 5 in total. Create 2 4/3 green spirit creature tokens. For each of them, put your choice of Vigilant, Reach, or Trample counter on it. So I'm trialing this mainly because it's a funny top end to drop 2, 4, 5 green spirit creatures on people, paired with Kodama, putting any of the tokens on them, so either Vigilance or Reach, automatically grants it Trample as well. So you can get 2, 4, 5 Reach trampling spirits for 5, which is actually pretty good value. I'm not sure if it's as good as having a 4th copy of Kodama, for example, but it's in here just to try it out. We'll see how it goes, and if I'm finding it gets stuck in my hand too often, then I'll probably drop it from the deck for something else. Alongside these new cards, we're running a few sort of old favourites. So Tenacious Pup is obviously excellent for modifying the next creature that comes in, and oddly enough is a nice target to be modified itself. Due to its 2 toughness for 1 mana, if you modify this thing, it can actually become difficult for them to remove, particularly with something like Oran Reef Ruse or Halana and Alina. It's actually a good second target. A slightly questionable potentially inclusion in the deck is Ranger class because it isn't a creature on turn 2, i.e. it's sort of a nombo with Kumano faces Kakuzan, as I won't necessarily have a creature to play if I play that on turn 1. However, it's just so much value in one card, and it is modifying attacking creatures, and it can give me somewhere else to put my mana late game if I ever get to the 3rd stage of the class. So just 2 copies of that for that reason, but it's kind of an old favourite. Running Snakeskin Veil as a modification tool. It's also a nice combat trick on occasion and a way of saving our creatures. We've brought back Oran Reef Ooze, which saw a lot of play a while back, kind of fell out of favour, but now with modifications and adding those extra counters, this is the brilliant addition in the deck. It's basically a 3/3 when you put it into play, or you can spread the tokens around and hit with it a turn earlier, but that sort of threat of being able to add counters to each of the creatures you attack with, especially if you compare it with a Kodama being on the battlefield and basically pulling all of your lands out of your deck, is a fantastic threat, and something that the opponent has to deal with very quickly. Finally, we're running 2 copies of Halana and Alina. Obviously, they are the sort of chief counter bringers in Gruul colours. It's only running 2 of these, partly because they're legendary, partly because we're already running 4 Thundering Raiju, so 6 4-drops is about the most you want at the top end of a sort of Gruul-y aggro deck. And yeah, this deck has been, I trialed it in an Alchemy event, and went 7-0 with it, and I've then been playing with it in the Mythic ladder, and I've had very good results so far. So I'll record some more games and show you guys how it performs. Finding games quickly today, so into the first game here with Munchies. Okay, we've got 2 Kodamas, 3 lands, It's actually probably a pretty good opening hand. Not perfect, but it'll do. Start off with my tap land. Let's see what we're playing against. I'm playing against some fun decks for the release of Kamigawa. I've seen all sorts of artifacts, enchantment decks, and unfortunately quite a few really slow control decks. But with this deck, we seem to be able to get under the control decks quite well, which is why I like playing this type of thing, because um, you know, you kind of know whether you've won against control decks in the first 10 turns, and you can kind of pack it in if you haven't. Okay, get the tech record down. The nice thing is if our opponent isn't playing a creature on turn 2, or even if they do, if it doesn't have 3 power, this could be a free land for us with a Kodama, or a free destroy of their creature. Yeah, they're definitely not going to want to lose that. Look at this ramp. I mean, no, we've got no enchantments or artifacts to destroy. One of the best things about pulling these lands out of my deck is that I'm not going to draw them. That's exactly what you want in an aggro deck. That's why Kodama fits so well. Being a 3/3/3 with reach as well, on top of all this other value, is such a good card. It's basically essential for the opponent to remove this, especially on the play, because yeah, this isn't going to work for them. Okay, I think I will remove this Trelasara whilst I can. It's only going to get bigger. So what I'll do first, I've only got one black, so there's not a lot they can do here, but just in case, I'll get a second modified creature in case they have a way of removing the one I have. So make sure I get the 2 extra damage. Swing for 5 and pull 2 more lands out the deck. This is normally about concede point, to be honest, unless they know they've got a board wipe in hand, which I don't think life gain decks like this are going to be playing them. Abzan, I don't know, some Abzan Lifegain strategy. And we've already got 7 lands in play. Turn 4. Unfortunately for them, we do have another Kodama and the Raiju that we can play in one turn. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's 2 more lands. This pair of land flooding with Lair of the Hydra is quite amusing, because it means we can now hit with like a 8/8, I think it is. Yeah. Even better with Ranger class and Kodama, because then we can give the Lair a trample as well. But yeah, you got to feel sorry for them. It's like kicking puppies, this game. The thing I was wondering about then is whether I could swap the trigger order around for these two, because if I can put the counter on before the ooze trigger, that would work better for me, but I guess it's not possible. GG. There was never really much doubt with that game. On to the next one. Okay, playing against number 199 here, going first. We don't have a 2-drop, but otherwise, very good hand. The question here is whether I want to play Kumano on the first turn. I would say probably not, just because we lose the value of the second turn, and the chance of us drawing a 2-drop on turn 2 isn't that high. So I think for values purposes, we just play the tap land out, play this on turn 2. It means we're 1 behind on our curve, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, we're actually not, because we can play Kumano and the pup out this turn. That means whatever we play next turn is going to have 2 1/1s on it. The question here is Kodama or Ooze. I think Ooze, just because I can put a 1/1 on this pup and get in for 2. So I could attack with both to threaten to pull a land out. Obviously, you could just block with the Valkyrie here and then let the pup through, or he can kill the pup with the Valkyrie and let the Ooze through. I think that's worth it. Oh, of course, we're getting counters on them, so he's letting one of them through regardless. I'm glad I recorded having that on camera. That's good. Well done, me. Inquisitor Captain, get a whole bunch of life back. This is where having the Invoke the Ancients at the top end is, it could be pretty nice. Let's see. But I think sticking them both on Vigilance and swinging away, it's going to start to cause our opponents some issues here. So we'll attack with these two again first. Obviously he's got a good block with the Valkyrie, but anything else he puts in front of that pup is getting killed off. Which is fine by me. 6 more damage to the face. Another land. And we've got 2 Vigilance Tramplers, 4/5s. We don't really need the reach. Whilst they've got their flyer, it's not for attacking. Not at the moment anyway. And the good news here is that we've got, what's this, 4, 7, 8 lands to play with. So that's a 6/6 Hydra. Obviously he can keep buffing up his Valkyrie, which is probably what he will do, but that still means he's only got 1 good block each time. Do we want to bother playing the Tech Wrecker? Probably not at this point. I think I'll just make this a 6/6 and swing. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 6/6. Not with those two. Thing is, as soon as he lets me kill that Valkyrie off with the Ooze, he's dead. But otherwise, he's got a 7/7 that's growing with trample each turn. That's a good game. GG. Yeah, mono white. We're just too big, too fast, especially on the play. It would be a different story on the draw. I think it'd be a lot closer. Okay, next game, Sars Yuso. Okay, so trickier starting hand this time. 3 red cards with no red mana, so that is a mulligan. And we're on the draw. We'll have to keep this. We'll ditch one of the Raijus. Okay, play the pup out. Although that does mean we don't have red mana on turn 2. But against blue-white, I don't think it matters. It's looking like a control deck, which is wonderful. Given the very slow start we've had, it's not really what I want to see. Okay, I will swing first. Doubt they're going to do anything to the pup, but you never know. And then just put the den in. That's actually a nice pickup really against control, because they're just waiting for me to play something. It's the endless battle. A free key to the archive isn't great. Doesn't mean we've got to be careful of overdeveloping the board, because Day of Judgment is one of the cards they can get out of that, and board wipes are pretty much this deck's nemesis. I think given we have a turn where we can, we should put the Raiju in and swing. At least we force them to deal with it and get in for a good chunk of damage. Still got a creature in hand. I mean, if they play a board wipe, they can't play much else. You know, we want to avoid them being able to get an easy memory deluge or anything like that in. Key to the Archive plus Teferi is a horrible combination if we can't get rid of that Teferi reasonably quickly. It's just life every turn. Yeah. So I can hit Teferi for 4, which might be the play here, rather than trying to develop any other kind of board. Alternatively, yeah, because we can then finish it with Cammy's Flare. I think that's probably the way to go. It leaves us with a 1-1 as well, which is something. At least we know we'll be able to finish that short of a counter next turn. And if they have to hold open for a counter, we can develop our board of more creatures. So it's not the ideal start against blue-white. He's still got 5 cards in hand, but let's see. Second key to the archive. If he doesn't hit a land drop this turn and we kill the Teferi, that actually puts us in a reasonably nice position. Whilst he's got 2 keys. It's not brilliant, but could have been worse. So 5 mana open. So I think playing any creatures into 5 mana open is probably a bad idea. So can I afford to power up Den and Cammy's Flare? No. I could power up the Lair for 1 and swing it to Ferry and see what he does. I could put in Ooze, put a token on the Goblin and swing. That might be the move. I think force them to waste some removal or some bounce or something on this Goblin, and then flare them after they've done it. I mean, they can't divide by 0 the Goblin either. That's one of the nice things about the tokens. Okay, let's see if we can do this in response, because we've got the modified Goblin, so it'll be 2 extra damage if we can. I think we've put them in. At least we're making them think. That's all we can really do against control players at this stage in the game, is try and make them think. Okay, that's nice. That is nice. So now they've basically used up a destroy anything on a free Goblin. So, and they've missed. Okay, they've actually drawn a land drop this time, but then done nothing, which is interesting. So I think we'll swing with the Den, and then Ranger class. It's probably the thing to do. Just try and put any pressure on, develop our board a little bit. That's okay. I can kill off the Den or the Ooze. Doesn't matter too much. Getting in for some damage, as well as being able to develop another 2/2 onto the board, and potential for more with Ranger class. They can't sit behind Hall of the Storm Giants forever if they're taking damage. Okay. Purge is not great. Okay, Invoke the Ancients is a good reply. I mean, unless they've drawn a counterspell in the last 2 turns, we will be able to resolve this. So I'm going to have my best crack at it. Or indeed a counterspell that only hits instants and sorceries. Okay, now they've drawn one. And they get to seek a 5 costing spell, which I have to assume in their deck will be a Doomscar. Yeah, can't see anything else that it could be presently. No point powering up Lair because it's straight into the hall. So I guess we'll put Kodama in. Actually, yeah, let's put Kodama in and level up Ranger class. The reason is I want to get one step closer to having that level 4 of Ranger class because that forces them to do something with it. They don't want us spitting out creatures onto the battlefield without having to draw them the whole time. And we have a Snakeskin Veil to protect Kodama if it's a targeted spell. Which we might as well make them use a second one since they have used the first one. I mean, I'm expecting them to, yeah, have another one. At least we will get a card unless they want to purge away this one token, which they don't. Okay, so they're down to 2 cards now, which is actually pretty decent. We'll play this. And then I'll probably just pop this clue before they get the opportunity to do anything to it. If I get a land, I can put it into play. The last thing we want is for them to have a memory deluge, sit behind their Hall of Storm Giants and then pop that, but Field of Ruin is a slight irritation, especially when we've got Lair, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, so here we can, if we force them to power up Hall, we can Boseiju to destroy a non-basic land, pay for the ward. I think that is actually, it'd be massive for us to kill off the Hall. And they can't counter Boseiju. That's what's nice about this ridiculous card. Yep, I think they're just realising that they can't counter it. I'm hoping they're stuck with like a divide by 0 that they can't use in their hand, and we can just keep hitting them with this token. That was a relatively successful turn against control. Good. What we want now is them to flood out and find nothing, because they're going to have to deal with this flipping next turn. So no point using the lair because they have a field. I think we'll swing and see what they do, because they don't want to take over half their remaining health. And I don't really want to play the ooze out into a board wipe. So I think what I will do is just level this, see if there's any creatures we can take off the top. There isn't. I'll just play this. It's 1 extra damage, which gives them 2 creatures to deal with next turn, which means they'll have to use the board wipe if they've got one. And then we can put the ooze in relatively safely, and we're getting the free creature off that enchantment at some point later, which has haste. It's a tight one, but it feels good at the moment. I don't want to get too confident. They dealt with it. That is their board wipe. At least we can get the Jugan back. Can I? No, I can't do this and hit my own creature. That's a shame. I think Do I play this one out? I think I play the ooze out, because then they have to deal with it again. And I'm casting a creature for the extra token off this. Not that I think the power level of it matters. I really want them to drop out a Teferi without having an instant speed removal. Yeah, just check. That is 2 damage to that permanence controller. Yeah. Okay, well, we've got our 2/2 haster, which presumably they have a way of dealing with. Nope. Oh, it was a hard fought win against control, that one. Hard fought. But there's only so many board wipes you can do, and this just, I think, it shows this deck's sustainability. It really does have a bit of a long game in it. Yeah, I think if that deck was running Memory Deluge and could select themselves their cards or had some way of sitting behind their Hall of the Storm Giants a bit better, they could have come through. But luckily for us, they didn't, or they didn't draw it. Come on. What I'd like to give this deck a challenge against is like another aggro-y or mid-range creature deck. I'd just love to see how it fares against that. I think particularly well, but I haven't had a chance to test it yet. Obviously my lands here aren't ideal, but I think on the play, this on turn 1 is just too good to pass up. Problem is I can never maximize the second level of it because I have no 2-drop and no untapped land, so I'd like an untapped land as my draw. That's what you get for playing all these Rockfall Vales. At least next time I can play Dugan and then get the ball rolling a little bit. We'll have a 2/2 to attack with anyway. Yeah, I think we'll attack. If they double block, it just means whatever I kill, they don't get the trigger off of. Which would they prefer? I think the flying one. Don't know if they appreciated that. He's taking the time to actually read the cards now. Inscription of Ruin. Can get rid of my land because I've got the 4th there. I think the Wrecker. Got no evidence that they're going to play artifacts or enchantments. I think we'll just stick the Raiju in. Start swinging. So we're going to get a 3rd creature from the Saga next turn. And then if I put Kodama in and they don't have blockers, it's going to be a land fest anyway. Honestly, this so far for me is like card of the set. It's absolutely fantastic. I think my next video I'm going to make will be on Mindlink. Is it Mindlink Hacker? Mind Hacker Mech, something like that. Just because it's hilarious, but not for any serious reason. Okay, let's get Kodama in now and start getting some lands out. Because we get the lands out, we can then get some value off Ranger class if we don't get board wiped, which would be... yeah, we'll just play this out. I don't really want to have a hand left against Tergrid. It's very often... It's very often discard that people are trying to get, not sacrifice. And if it's sacrifice, I can't do anything about it anyway. So we can attack with that. That's sadly all this turn. But it's another land. So if we're made to sacrifice the most expensive, for example, Soul Shatter, we can ditch the Dugan rather than Kodama, I think. Yeah, see, we would have had to discard anyway. We're going to play out everything we draw, for sure. It's just, it's just how many lands do you want to let me take out of my deck? I'd like to shuffle as well because I've only got a Kami's Flare on top, which isn't that helpful to me right now. There we go. We can take that ooze off the top. Now that would be a nice draw, so we can pay 2. And now our remnant is an 8/8 because everything we have is modified. Basically, it's a board wipe or go home. There we go. Go home. Okay, a very quick post-game wrap here, just to show that I've only played this deck for about 20 odd matches, 21 matches, and achieved a 76% win rate, as you'd expect, 81% a lot higher on play, 57 on the draw. I think that's a little bit harsh. I think I got screwed a couple of times on the draw, but yeah, it's still a very decent win rate, and this is all achieved in, you know, the top 1,000 of Mythic, mostly above that, top 500. So it's obviously a decent deck. It's performing pretty well. I would say the one or the couple of things that I need to think about a little bit in the deck is, do I need one more Halana and Alina, as I'm struggling sometimes a little bit at the top end? Is it worth having Ranger class, as it doesn't make the most of the Kumano faces Kakazan? Um, and do I need Snakeskin Veils main boarded? Not sure. It does work as a nice little combat trick from time to time, but just not quite sure. Not quite sure. And obviously Invoke the Ancients. So far, the usage of it seems to have been good. It seems good. So I think I'll keep it. Okay, well, thank you everybody for watching. I think, as I said, my next deck will probably be a Mind Link mech or similar, so a bit more of a janky, less ladder focused deck. But yeah, thanks for those who stayed to the end. And if you did enjoy the deck, give it a like and subscribe, please. See you soon.